generating a lot of buzz in the gaming community. Set in a post-apocalyptic world that is ravaged by sandstorms and ruled by ruthless factions, Atlas Fallen promises to be an immersive and action-packed experience that will keep players on the edge of their seats. One of the standout features of Atlas Fallen is its setting. It's a shame we don't see more open-world games set in the sweeping dunes of a great desert, and yet Atlas Fallen embraces this setting stylishly. The game's golden oasis of destruction looks stunning, with bits of particulate flying around in every direction in response to the player's movements. Movement is one of the best parts of Atlas Fallen, and there are plenty of different ways to get around, from the raise ability that lets you lift platforms and other buried points of interest out of the sand, to the air dash that gives you an extra forward mid-air boost after you've expended both of your jumps. The game's seamless open world absolutely begs to be explored. And there's plenty to explore. While I didn't see too much of it beyond the areas surrounding the first village, Castrum 7, the game's open world is full of quests to complete and NPCs to speak to, each with their own backstories and interesting dialogue. The open world is also littered with stuff to find, like loose crafting resources and wildlife. One of the things that delighted me the most was that if I observed an animal from a distance, it would gradually lead me toward treasure with golden footsteps, turning completely gold once it had found a suitable digging spot. There's also a friendly traveling merchant who wanders the desert, and it's so neat to be able to identify him from a distance by his ornate flying kite. But the real heart of Atlas Fallen lies in its combat system. The game's action combat is both visually entertaining and challenging, rewarding players for thinking tactically while they juggle their Essence Stone abilities and Momentum Bar. The way it works is, as players unleash their basic attacks with their transforming axe and sword weapons, their momentum gauge fills up, unlocking Essence abilities of ascending tiers to use in battle, with the caveat that they are easier to deal damage to if their momentum bar gets too high. It can feel exceptionally good once you get into a groove, but it's also where players might run into framerate drops and performance issues that can ground the action to a halt, even causing them to die a few times during tougher battles. However, when it works really well. The enemy designs in Atlas Fallen are also quite interesting. From the diver that dives into the ground and reappears at random, to the heavily armored, crab analog shellbasher that requires players to parry in perfect synchronization with its pounding pincer attacks, the game's enemies keep players on their toes. And when players finally defeat their enemies, they can unleash the Shatter ability that can be activated by pressing both gamepad triggers at exactly the same time when their momentum bar is sufficiently filled up, unleashing a massive hammer attack that freezes and shatters any opponent who gets in the way of it. This is quite the spectacle on screen, giving justice to the wild array of sand effects going off at once as the whirling storm of weapons and movements displace sand in all directions. One of the things that impressed me most about Atlas Fallen is its attention to detail. The world is full of small touches that help bring it to life, like the way the sand reacts realistically to the player's movements or the way the character's clothing flaps in the wind. The game also features a custom character who has come into possession of a magical gauntlet, which is a central piece of gear in the post-apocalyptic story. The gauntlet grants the player various abilities, such as the power to lift platforms out of the sand or to dash through the air. What's even more impressive is how seamlessly the game incorporates these abilities into the open-world exploration and combat mechanics, making for a truly immersive experience. Speaking of combat, Atlas Fallen features a unique combat system that is both visually stunning and challenging. The game rewards players for thinking tactically and strategizing their attacks by allowing them to fill up their momentum gauge as they unleash basic attacks with their transforming axe and sword weapons. As the gauge fills up, players can unlock ascending tiers of essence abilities to use in battle. However, the caveat is that players become easier to damage if their momentum bar gets too high, adding an extra layer of risk and reward to the already thrilling combat system. The enemies in Atlas Fallen are just as impressive as the combat mechanics, with interesting designs that keep players on their toes. For example, the diver enemy can dive into the ground and reappear at random, while the heavily armored shellbasher requires precise timing and strategizing to hit its vulnerable spots. It's a testament to the game's design that even after spending several hours with the demo build, I still felt excited and challenged by the combat encounters. But combat is not the only thing that Atlas Fallen does well. The game also features a vast open world that begs to be explored. The game's first village, Castrum 7, is loaded with quests to complete and NPCs to speak to, each with their own backstories and interesting dialogue. The game's seamless open world also features loose crafting resources and wildlife that can lead players to treasure with golden footsteps. And let's not forget the friendly traveling merchant who wanders the desert, identifiable from a distance by his ornate flying kite. All in all, Atlas Fallen is shaping up to be a truly unique and impressive game. With its attention to detail, immersive combat system, and vast open world, it's clear that the developers have poured their hearts and souls into creating an unforgettable gaming experience. While there were some framerate drops and performance issues in the demo build, I remain curious and excited to see what the final product will look like when it launches on May 16th. Thanks for watching. See you next time.